This is Beyond the Balance Sheet, and today's conversation is a part of our America 250 series, exploring the values that shaped the nation and still matter today. As the country approaches its 250th anniversary, one of the most enduring values is stewardship, the responsibility to protect trust, institutions, and people over the long term. Joining us is David Pijor, the chairman and CEO of FVCbank. David has spent decades guiding institutions through economic cycles, regulatory change, and moments that tested public trust. David, welcome.
Thanks, Vince. It's good to be here.
And co-hosting with me today, Patricia Ferrick. Patricia is the president of FVCbank. Trish, it is great, as always, to have you with us.
Thanks, Vince. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
David, when we talk about stewardship, not just of a bank, but of trust itself, how does that responsibility show up for you today compared to, say, earlier in your career?
To me, stewardship means recognizing that what we're entrusted with isn't really ours. Whether it's capital, relationships, or confidence, we are caretakers. Our responsibility is to protect it, grow it responsibly, and pass it forward stronger than we found it.
Has that understanding for you changed over time?
The pace has changed. The tools have changed. But the responsibility has not. Trust has always been fragile. Once it's lost, earning it back is incredibly difficult.
David, having worked closely with you for many years, I've seen you make decisions that weren't always the easiest in the moment, but were clearly about protecting something bigger over the long term. How do you personally distinguish between short-term success and true stewardship when you're making those calls?
Short-term thinking optimizes for the next quarter. Stewardship optimizes for the next generation. It means sometimes saying no when you could say yes, and being comfortable knowing that the payoff won't always be immediate.
And over time, do customers and communities recognize that difference, even if they don't always put the word stewardship to it?
They do. Consistency builds confidence. People notice when an institution behaves the same way in good times and in bad. That reliability matters more than any single decision.
Trust today faces challenges that didn't even exist a generation ago. Fraud, cybersecurity threats, growing skepticism toward institutions. How should leaders think about protecting trust in this kind of environment?
It starts with acknowledging reality. Threats exist. Pretending otherwise erodes trust faster than being honest. Stewardship today means preparation, transparency, and accountability. How you respond matters more than whether problems occur.
Okay, so stewardship is not about perfection.
Exactly. It's about responsibility, especially when things don't go as planned.
I've watched you lead through strong economies, downturns, and periods of regulatory change. How important is steadiness, showing up the same way through cycles, to maintaining institutional trust?
It's critical. Trust isn't built during good times alone. It's built by how consistently you behave when conditions are difficult. That's when people are really paying attention.
Now, as we approach America's 250th anniversary, why do you think that stewardship is such a relevant value right now?
Because the country itself was built by people who thought long term. They were creating institutions meant to endure. That mindset feels especially important today when so much feels accelerated and disposable.
If you could leave listeners with one thought about stewardship and trust, what would it be?
Trust is built slowly and lost quickly. Stewardship is the discipline to protect it, even when no one is watching.
So true. David, thank you for sharing that perspective. Stewardship and trust are not ideas we talk about often enough, yet they are foundational to everything that endures. Banks, businesses, and communities alike. This conversation is a part of our America 250 series, where we're exploring the values that truly shape the nation and still matter today. David Pijor, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Balance Sheet.
It's good to be here. Thank you.